Alrighty, hi everyone, this is Ion Blaze, and in this video it's going to be about these 8 core differences that I notice from bards on P99 versus bards on Mingler. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so the first thing I wanted to go over was how charm works. Yeah, so what I'm going to be talking about is this one, Solon's Bewitching Bravura. Actually, notice I'm in an EC tunnel in both games, although it's called the Common Lands tunnel on live. Yeah, you can see just the huge difference. Okay, so let me bring up Aoe Spells and you can see. Alright, so this is the difference I noticed between P99 and live in regards to how this particular song works. Solon's Bewitching Bravura. So this is the level 39 charm that bards get. It works up to level 51. It charms mobs up to level 51. But on P99 it costs 20 mana as opposed to 60. So you'll say, okay, but why does it cost 3 times more mana? Well, because on P99 this charm only lasts for about 15 to 18 seconds, where on live it lasts for a full minute. So what? 3 times longer, so 3 times more the mana. And another thing to keep in mind as well is that on P99 you can actually start recasting the charm prior to it breaking. So let me show it. So I casted the charm. So it's gonna be 4 ticks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and now start the recast. This is lasting way longer than expected. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, you can start the recast much sooner. Actually, I'm stupid. I shouldn't be using my instrument. I should use my instruments to do more damage this way. Okay. So yeah, you notice that. You can recast the charm. Recast the charm prior to it breaking. So let me show how it works here. Oh, there's a mob. And so we got a full minute, right? Now I'm going to press the charm. You cannot cast a spell on your pet. It will not let you cast it until it breaks. So that's one big difference I've noticed. And I think you can dispel it too, which is kind of a cool thing. I don't think you can. No, I think you can dispel it on you can dispel it. On live probably. It's just the problem is you can't see the buffs, what placement it is. So it's a bit more difficult. And the other thing, what else? No, that's pretty much all I wanted to mention about it. I find, in terms of the the live charm being a minute is better in terms of a longer fight. So if you're just going to be using 2 mobs at a time, if you're just going to be charming 1 mob and fighting another, it's perfect. You don't have to constantly have to keep refreshing your charm. But if you're doing a full-on like 10 to 15 mob charm kite, the problem at that point is your charm pet is taking so much damage that you're not getting the full use of your charm. You're not getting the full duration, so you're having to break it early. And in that case, you're wasting mana essentially. So what I find is that yeah, on P99, the charm it's more to juggle because yeah, it's 18 seconds. So if you're in a group or something, you have to be much more on top of your. It's the 5th song in the cycle. Once your 5th twist song on the twist is on, you need to start recasting the charm. You have to be a lot more time savvy. Whereas on here, it'll show you how much time is left on the little buff, like right here. 2 minutes left, 11 seconds left. It'll show you exactly there. And the fact that it lasts a minute, you don't have to. You can get a couple twists in. You can probably twist 3 or 4 full sets of songs prior to the charm actually breaking. The next thing I wanted to mention, number 2, is PB Aoe spells. So what I'm talking about here is this: Chords of Dissonance, Denon's Disruptive Discord, Chords of Cessation. So let me show these. So these are the AoE spells that you use for AoE dot swarm kiting on P99. But let me show how they work here. So let me go grab aggro on a mob. Let's do this one right here. Okay, so you notice it's doing damage. Yeah, 16 points of damage. But watch. As soon as this mob goes running, too bad it doesn't have a lot of health. Okay, now if I try to do it now, watch. Okay, it landed, but watch, there's no damage. Should have done some damage by now. So on what the nerf was on live, what the nerf happened on live is that if a mob is moving, the PB AoEs do not do any damage whatsoever. So that essentially made AoE dot swarm kiting obsolete. You can't do it anymore. But fortunately, you saw that last I did 55 damage from a fire single target dot. The single target dots still do damage despite the mob moving. So I can kind of show. Chewbacca died today? Okay, let me show. Yeah, let's pick up, say, Denon's Bereavement. This is another PB AoE. And it's stringed, I believe. Mob will probably die before. Denon's Bereavement's gonna hit like a truck. There is a mob. Okay, here we go. So I got that on it. Now, let's get it moving. See, it was moving there, and it still took damage. The only thing I noticed, though, is that if a mob is moving at full speed with any dot on P99, it takes like half the amount of damage that it normally would take. So that's a big difference there. So that's why if you're going to solo as a bard, arguably the best way on live is to charm kite, because you can't swarm kite anymore, obviously. This is a humongous difference, which I'm about to show. Humongous difference between the two games. which is Manna Pulsing. So, what I mean by that is this. This song right here, Cassandra's Chorus of Clarity, works entirely differently on both games. And what I mean by that is, look, Cassandra's Chorus of Clarity on live is a static buff for 17 seconds. Whereas here, if I play it, you'll notice nothing. No buff. And why is that? Because Cassandra's Chorus of Clarity on P99 is a pulse. So every single time that you play it, gives an uptick of mana. So it's actually one of the cool things you can do about it. I have a video, I haven't made it public, but from Lout, that's one of my friends here on P99, he told me that if you run Pure Tone Discipline, which is a level 60 discipline that bards get that gives you like a 26 or 28 mod, the best instrument mod you possibly can, which will modify singing, which Cassandra's Chorus of Clarity is. You can essentially get like 1 or 2 extra complete heals if you're in a cleric group. So if you're raiding in a and you have a complete you have a heal chain group with 5 clerics and you as the bard. You can click Pure Tone Discipline, play this, and then pretty much every single cleric in that group is guaranteed to have enough mana to have an extra complete heal, if not 2, because of you pulsing this. So ideally how you peak mana regen on P99 is you play your Cantana line once, and then you pulse Cassandra's 3 times. This is the first time, second time, and third time. So even during off times, as you can see, even when you're not actively fighting bards on P99 because there's no melody, you're constantly twisting, even when there's nothing going on, just because you want to get peak mana regen. Pretty annoying. And one of the things though, so I think you can probably generate more mana on live. I mean, you can probably generate more mana on P99 just because the Pure Tone. Or no, you know what? Probably not. Actually, it's probably about equal. One of the differences, though, you'll notice about it, one of the differences that I'll mention is that because Cassandra's is a static buff on live, what that does is you don't have to pulse it 3 times. So that opens up your song twist. So for your peak mana regen, all you'd have to do is play your Cantana, Cassandra's, and then you can play 2 other songs. You could play another HP regen, you could play a haste, you could do what you want. So that's actually a huge benefit of live in that regard, is it gives you a bit more flexibility even during off times, whereas during regenning times on P99, you don't want to play anything but those 2 songs. The next thing I'll mention is instruments. There's a huge difference. Huge difference. I've noticed, which is that if I right-click most of these instruments, we'll notice. Yeah, let me change illusion. So, if I inspect my instruments here, you'll notice something really big. Secondary, secondary, secondary. And you cannot put anything in your primary. So why does that matter? Well, if you look at my skills, and a hand is maxed. Where if you look at all my instruments in this game, primary, secondary, primary, secondary, primary, secondary. This is the same exact instrument actually as this one. Secondary only, primary and secondary. And if you look at my skills here, hand to hand is, I never had to use it, 5. So what's the difference? On P99, you cannot, on almost every single instrument, it's only secondary equip, and you can't put anything in the primary. So half the time you can't even, to be arguably the most efficient you can as a bard, because you're not really that great with DPS melee-wise, it's just to keep your instrument equipped the whole time. You can't even have a weapon in the offhand to fight. Whereas that is not the case here. Almost all the instruments are primary and secondary, and you can have a weapon in your primary. Even stuff, it's a huge difference. So where that matters is, let's say you get the epic, right? Let's say you get the epic. Here's the problem. On P99, you couldn't use the epic in your primary or your offhand if you had only these secondary instruments. What you'd have to get is a primary equip instrument like this. There's only a few. There's only one primary equipped drum on P99. There's only 2 primary equipped strings, which is Lute of the Howler and one that drops from Vishan Peak. There's, I think, 2 horns. Lute doesn't matter. At that point, your instrument does everything your lute could do. Your wind instrument. So, not your lute, I'm sorry, the wind instrument, yeah. Your flute, not the lute. So, let me show. So, yeah, you can equip something in the offhand if you have a primary equip instrument, but the problem is they're so hard to come by that it really made those primary equip instruments so incredibly special. It's one of the things I really sought after, is to have a primary equip instrument in every single slot for every single major instrument. I wanted to have a primary drum, a primary really good string, a primary brass. I wanted to have those just because I could equip a weapon in the offhand. Whereas here on live, it's not a concern at all. You know, your epic doesn't matter even if you have this beginner. If you have the beginner instrument like that, you can still primary equip it, which is a huge, tremendous difference. This game, P99, makes primary equip instruments so much more valuable in that regard. The next thing I'll mention are some differences among other spells. So I already mentioned Charm being different, but what are some other spells that seem to be different? One of them I'll do is Occlusion of Sound, which is a Velious spell. This spell, you get it at level 55 off of a mob drop. You have to equip a percussion instrument to use it. And on P99, it is a unresistible lowering of resist. It lowers 22 for my current instrument mod. I reduce magic resist, cold resist, and fire resist by -22, and it's unresistible here. Whereas from what I looked up on the Alakazam, the spell guide, let me go to it. It doesn't seem to be unresistible. Occlusion. Bard. Yeah, it does not seem to be unresistible at all. So I think it can actually be resisted on live as opposed to P99. So normally when I would be in a raid, my twist would normally be this. I throw out a Dispel first, so Sylvian's anti-magic aura. I throw out an Occlusion because it's unresistible. And then I would throw out a Fuful's Curtailing Chant because that also subtracts magic resist. And then usually by that time, anybody, an enchanter or a shaman, can throw out the Tash and Mallow and they could land anything that they wanted to land at that point. So that is a big thing I've noticed, that difference. As well, Nilipis March of the Wii. Let me show that. Let me look it up. Nilpis March of the Wii. Looks stupid, you know, it looks like a completely worthless song here on live, right? Increase AC by 9, AGI by 18, the damage shield is, I mean, the rune is a joke, it's horrible. Why would you ever want to use this? Well, you don't on live, because it looks like complete garbage, to be honest. But it actually has a purpose here on P99 that I used all the time for raiding. And it's kind of sad, like that song is completely useless. I think they really need to change it back to how it was on P99, how it was back in Classic. Because at least it was worth using. And why is it worth using? Because on P99, it is a shrink. Look. I just shrunk down. And you'll say, okay, well, still, it's only a temporary buff here. I mean, you can see it's going to wear off, and it's going to go away. Actually, no. Watch. Yeah, I increase in size. It's only temporary, but look at this. This guy was a half-elf, just like me. I'm shorter than he is. So it's still like half the size of the shrink. It's still permanent, even though it just broke off. It's still permanent even though half the size broke off, yeah. So it's still useful in that regard. No, that's all. That's all the other spells I noticed that was a difference between the other ones. Yeah. So those are the spells that I noticed there's a bit of a difference between the two games. I really wish they would change Nilpis, to be honest, because it's that shrink is so incredibly useful. It's so useful. It's not as good as shamans, which it shouldn't be. Bards should not have as good of a shrink as shamans do, but it should be at least something. The fact that you can go on a raid when you get these big ugly butt ogres and trolls and ixars that take up your whole frickin' screen on a raid and you can't see over them at all, and the fact that you can shrink them down a whole entire group by yourself is a godsend. It is so useful when they can't shrink themselves or you don't have any shamans. Man, I really wish they brought that back to live, because that spell is useless on live. Why would I ever use it on live? I would never do it. It's stupid. Okay, the next difference. Obviously, there's no bandolier on live. So if you want to swap instruments, you gotta manually do it. So I'm playing Celos right now, and there's no bandolier to switch to string for Cantana, so I have to manually do it myself. Whereas on live, you know, bandolier, swap to that. Let's see, swap to my instrument. I didn't have to do any instrument swapping at all myself, personally. And as well as the melody command, you don't have that on P99, so you have to manually twist every single thing, which makes it rather tedious. Even during off times, you're still twisting. When no one else is doing stuff, they're just sitting down and relaxing, you're still twisting. It sucks. It definitely sucks, but you get used to it. And the MMO mouses help out tremendously. And another thing too I was going to mention, let's get this off, is save spell sets. So I do, yeah, you see I have all these different save spell sets. So honestly, I don't even really need this. I don't need to mark what songs are supposed to go into what spell slot. I just do it because it's color coded for, you know, what bandolier activations I want for a particular outset. I don't need to do that because it's already there. I don't need to remember what goes into what slot. But on here, there's no such thing. You can't do save spell sets. So that's why you'll notice I have the names of all the songs I want in each one of my specific ones. So this is my like single This is my traveling spell set and sort of single target dotting. This is my grouping, I believe. No, this is my rating for being in a caster group. This is my spell set for rating for being in a melee group for the damage shield. This is being in just a regular group for both melee and caster. I'm not sure what that one is for. And this is for AoE swarm kiting. That's the spell set. So it just helps me find out, okay, so like I want snare on the first one. So I want to put this Celo's Assonant Strain. Or Largo's Abstinent Binding. I want to put these snares on. And then I'm going to want to put Foofles in slot 2. And then I want to put Scylla's Assonant Strain. Bereavement. And you can see the whole reason I made these spell sets as they are right here, why I put it right here, is just because you won't be able to remember what song you want in one slot. So this kind of helps you. Even though there's no difference between any of the macros, this snare is still cast 1, still cast 1, still cast 1. They're all the same, but just the information on front helps me remember what I want to put in what slot. Just because you don't have space, save spell sets. And the fact, again, you can't use you can put the bandolier thing here, so you don't even have to manually swap the instrument. You can put it into your macros themselves. And then the last thing I've noticed it's a difference is instrument-only songs. So let me show an example of that. Like, an example of that would be Aglemente's Aria of Eagles. This is a wind instrument song that will not play unless I have a wind instrument equipped. Some other instrument-only songs include on P99, at least from what I know. They include the earlier Cantana that you get in Velius, it's like level 30. That's stringed instrument only. What else? Occlusion of Sound is stringed as a percussion only. Aquatic Ire, so your Enduring Breath song, is you have to have an instrument equipped for that. That's actually a big difference, as well as Levitate requires an instrument. Yeah, Cantana Soothing. This is level 34 that you get in Velius. It's mana and HP that replaces him in Velius. When at lower levels, you have to have an instrument for that. Why does this matter? So some songs still require an instrument on live, but here's one of the differences. So Levitate doesn't show that. So this is a wind song and I have a drum equipped. Should not work. And during breath, you don't have to have a drum out. Show that too. Invisibility also, it still requires an instrument in both games. But I just wanted to show that because those are some big differences that you'll notice, and especially considering the fact that some of these songs are the fact that, you know, most of these instruments are secondary only, and then you have to swap instruments and all that. Makes it a little bit more inconvenient on P99 in that regard. But that's all I wanted to go over. Those are the 8 big things that I've noticed that are different between the two games. Thank you guys all for watching. Hope it wasn't too long.